Hi, intrepid viewers. It's Saturday in Australia, and as you can see from my sweater, it's midwinter. So cold. I'm back, and I've managed to leave the Sydney lockdown and arrive just in time for another lockdown in Melbourne. I tell you what, lockdowns travel with me. So I am now fully vaccinated. I'm probably one of the 7 people who are now. And we will have a look at that today because apparently Florida has 20% of all new cases. Now, I don't want to get into the vaccination debate individually with people. It's your call whether you do or don't, but just know that it's now being described by the CDC, the Centre for Disease Control, as a pandemic of the unvaccinated. So Australia did really well with everything until it came to the vaccinations, and we're scrabbling to get enough vaccines. I mean, we're only 26 million people. I mean, that's Scotty from marketing, our Prime Minister. Good at marketing, not so good at delivering. Okay, so he goes on television every day and lies. So he goes on and says, you can be tested anywhere, you can go and get your vaccine at pharmacies and hospitals. No, you can't. You go there and they go, we've got no vaccine. Anyway, because I'm a bossy old tart, I managed to lobby and get it. We'll get there. Okay, but the big news. Remember, those of you who have been following all of us as political tarot readers since 2017, we all said early on, we think it's a woman who's going to bring down Trump. You know, everyone seemed to agree on that. It was weird. And over the years, we've gone, is it Ivanka? Is it this one? Is it that one? Is Melania going to do it? Is so-and-so, you know? I think I have the answer, but that's later. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is Arizona. How many months has this mythical audit been going on, you know, with the cyber ninjas who no one knows anything about, and there's no outcome. It has no end game. Well, you can imagine why, because they can't find anything, even though they've done their best to butcher it and, you know, fabricate votes or lose votes or do whatever they've done. They've given it their best shot. And we can only be grateful collectively, dear intrepid viewers, can only be grateful they're so bad at what they do. God help us all, particularly America, if a competent team of fascists got in, because really it'd be all over. Fortunately, they keep getting pillow executives and things to run these things, and so they fall over. But let's check in on the Arizona audit. They must be running out of excuses. Let's see what's happening with Arizona now. Okay, women celebrating, that's weird. Oh, good news. I wonder about this, you know. Here's the thing. This has very much been about trying to prove the unprovable, right? You're trying to prove something happened that didn't happen, and although they're very good at shade, they're not so good that they can fiddle the numbers. So I think this is because broadly, Biden gets more support from women than the Yeti ever did. I think this could be women celebrating that it'll come to an end without anything dramatic happening. This is the good news USA card holding up to the pressure. Talk about barbarians at the gate, you know. It's holding up. They're still at it. What are you doing today? I'm counting the votes again. What are you doing? Hoping to come up with a different number. I love that technique. So they're still doing it. But they're not getting anywhere with it. They are not getting anywhere with it. Here's what I think is a bit sus. I don't know if you have that expression in the US. It comes from the UK, sus meaning suspicious. Something's a bit sus. This is having to come up with a strategy, an exit strategy, because they haven't got one. They can't stop it because they haven't thought through the next stage, because they're all there supporting each other going, yeah, we're for the Yeti. They're now starting to look for a strategy. Here comes the leadership card. This could be Governor, what's his name, Ducey? He's not the worst in the world. He's a Republican, but apparently he wasn't that keen on the audit. Can any Arizona voters get back to me on that? He might show some leadership in the end and draw a line in the sand. Can Arizona people get back to me on that, please? He might just go, look, we've got to wind it up. I think it's more likely to go out with a whimper than a bang. They'll just stop talking about it. Look, really. Now, in the gossip column, all this stuff about Britney Spears. Now, I didn't follow it closely at first. It's actually, I think, a more important case than I realised, certainly, which is the conditions of her guardianship are they're just abysmal. They're a diabolical infringement of human rights. I had no idea how bad it was. So not only does her father and the lawyer control her money, they control what she eats, they control her body. She has been fitted with an IUD, an intrauterine device. I've worked in family planning here in Australia, which is your Planned Parenthood and stuff. And the women who had IUDs, which were big in the 70s and have fallen out of favour for a reason, would come in the most excruciating pain because your body's trying to expel a foreign object. And they have had her forcibly fitted with an IUD. That is outrageous. This puts Handmaid's Tale front and foremost of this conversation. And so apparently, just from what I've read, her father gets $16,000 a month, the lawyer gets $10,000 a month, and she gets $8,000 a month. But she's committed to all these performance states and requirements, and it's appalling. So I think this will grow, and eventually, as my reading suggested at the time, not now, but it will, she will be liberated from this, but it's frightful. But in the gossip section that I was getting up to, Matt Gaetz, you know, if ever there was a jock, you know, it was Matt Gaetz. He's one of those upmarket sort of jock types. He turned up at a Free Britney protest. What was Matt Gaetz doing there? Is it because he watched her in the Mickey Mouse Club or something? Because Matt Gaetz got the hots for Britney and he thought he could get a bit of publicity for a minute. I mean, what was he there for? Okay, let's just have a quick look at that before we move on to the juicy stuff. Emperor. Oh, I think he holds a bit of a torch for Britney. Lucky Britney. Here he is, the emperor of his own world, because he certainly wouldn't be in the real world, but in Matt Gaetz' land, probably, you know, at his mother's dinner table, he's the emperor, right? That's him. And he's a bossy, privileged, sort of nauseating guy. He's one of those rich guys with the brain of a tadpole and could buy his way through college and all the rest of it, you know, and is bossy and all those emperor-like things. Here's Britney held hostage by Dad and the lawyer. She's just had a win before you all write to me. She can now, for the first time at 39 or whatever she is, she can get her own lawyer. That's why things are going to change. She's had a bad lawyer. Hands up who saw Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, because this is that story. Remember, she had that guardian from hell, and it was a revenge fantasy of what to do when you have the guardian from hell. So I hope Britney's watched it. Anyway, this is her. So here's the emperor. This is Britney. Britney feeling the loss and the pain of being able to run her own life. It's just appalling, right? That's that story. And he's going to save her. Oh. That's his fantasy. Oh, my word. He's going to save Britney. Could be the only decent thing he ever does. Maybe he can pull enough strings. Who knows? Ah. Well, I was asked about that, so there we go. But it is a much bigger issue. And as people are saying, if she was a man, this would not be happening. And a mental health doctor actually said that we can't even compulsorily make people take pharmaceutical drugs legally, note the legally, but they can force her to take these drugs. So she could end up with a gigantic compensation payout, actually. Okay, but here's what I want to share with you. Now, you know about who's the one bringing it down. Following the stuff as Trump org collapses, isn't it fabulous? There's going to be no Trump org left by the end of the year. I really don't think so. I really don't think so. But there's always been the problem. Even though they've got millions of documents and everyone knows Trump's been, you know, with his finger on the pulse of everything because he's a narcissistic sociopath, but it's hard to prove. You know, the criminal intent is hard to prove. And so Michael Cohen, for example, has given extended testimony, which of course we do believe because it's obviously correct that nothing went through that place without Donald's permission. But at the end of the day, he's a convicted felon, and it's easy to point out if you're the opposition, why should we believe Michael Cohen? And so it's very hard. Mary Trump, family member, but it's easy to say, oh, well, she's just disgruntled because of what happened with the inheritance. And because it's such a minute organisation, it's not even a mom and pop operation, it's a pop and pop operation. He could slide out. But the woman, I think, who's going to bring down the Yeti is Jennifer Weisselberg. And the reason for that came to me last night. I saw her face. I rarely see actual images. I saw her face. And what I read this morning went ting to me because she gave an account of when they were talking about her kids' school fees and what they were and weren't paying her husband, who is Weisselberg's son. Donald himself was there going, I've got this, we'll do this and we'll do that. She's got the first-hand testimony. It could be her testimony about that actually ends up proving intent and ends up bringing him down. So I'm going to have another dedicated look at Jennifer Weisselberg. I've seen her a few times, as I'm sure you all have, whether it's on late night TV or whatever, and she's always been okay. And then I saw her recently and she was, I think, allegedly, not even allegedly, this is purely opinion, she seemed to me to be totally drunk. I hope she doesn't get too drunk to give testimony. I was surprised because she'd been okay in other interviews and suddenly she was almost as far gone as Don Jr. Okay, Jennifer Weisselberg and her role with Trump org. That's the problem when the only thing you've got is your name and your name turns to you're in trouble. He's got nothing else to sell. Jennifer Weisselberg. Oh, Oh, USA is having a big outing today. Yep. Very interesting. So the star, hope and inspiration, really important card as it keeps turning up, because this is not just about us getting secret jollies out of the Yeti's downfall. It's a much bigger picture. You know, America has been brushing up against this authoritarian mentality for so long. I must do a new one on the Christian right too. But this is always, for me, what is important about the USA and what it represents to yourselves as Americans and to the rest of the world. And that's a very mixed bag, as we know. However, here we have it. The Fool, to a certain extent, this is new beginnings, and I think this is new beginnings in terms of the investigation. It's been going on for some while, but I think it's referring to that with her. And she brings an innocence to the table. Like I was saying, compared with Michael Cohen or someone else, we've got to hear from Calamari yet too. I'll do a quick read before I go on Calamari. Calamari, just because I like saying it. Okay, but she's a comparative innocence. She's not a high-powered corporate executive type or anything. She's, you know, coming to the table with, I married into this family and it was really nice for a while. And, you know, we got to live in this palatial apartment and my kids got a really good education. But there's an innocence to the Fool. So, you know, I'm not saying she's holier than thou, but compared with a lot of the other ugly players, she's an innocent. She thought about this long and hard before she did it. We've heard her name for the last few months and now it's gone past the point of no return. But it wasn't actually an easy decision for her to make, because she instinctively knew that she actually had not so much, I don't think she knew she had a huge role to play, but just in setting the record straight, because she could have just said thanks and shut her mouth and sat pretty, but she didn't. So something motivated her, which I think was her higher self. It's almost higher than the actual person's life. I really do. Okay, so with the leadership here, who is the leader? I think this could be because this is Jennifer Weisselberg's reading, even if you're divorcing a family, when you know how much the world media is focused on everything your family does, it was still very courageous for her to talk about Alan as much as knowing it had that impact on Trump.org. So this is breaking the heart of the leader. So I think in a way she's breaking Weisselberg's heart, not because I think he's so much warm and fuzzy, but it's sort of the third sword in there or something. It's doomsday stuff for Alan Weisselberg because of her testimony. And that in turn sets the dominoes in play for proving that the Yeti knew absolutely everything that was going on. But in the meantime, now they've taken Alan Weisselberg off, you know, taken his name off the letterhead everywhere. Who's going to run the company? Well, it's hilarious to think of the options, isn't it, really? Don Jr., you know, Ivanka disappeared. Won't be Ivanka. So it's the boys. Won't that be interesting? See how good they are when they're actually having to do things. Yeah, it'll be hilarious that the lights won't go on because no one will have paid the power bill in Trump Tower, and they'll be going, you know, wasn't that your job, Eric? No, I thought it was yours. Where do you pay the power bill? You know. So it's not until they don't have any toilet rolls left they'll realise they're actually not that efficient. Okay, so I'm going to have a look at calamari because he's the next shoe to drop. Calamari. He was something to do with finance in the organisation. So he was junior to Weisselberg. There's a word for it. I can't think this second. It's a funny word. Controller. Yeah, he was the financial controller of Trump org. Think about that sentence. He'd have some dirt. So is he going to spill his guts? Has he already? I'm sure he would have been interviewed. Let's put it differently. Will Calamari's testimony make a difference? Will Calamari's testimony make a difference? Will Calamari's testimony make a difference? Will it make a difference? Or not? Who knows? We will find out. Yes, well, I'm not surprised. Oh, yeah, well. Now, Alan Weisselberg, as we know, appears to be holding out. I'm not entirely convinced of this. I think he might be a bit scared of them and might have said something and everything, or not. He might be truly old school. You can cut my toes off one at a time and I'm not going to tell you what you want to know, right? He could be that hardcore. But Calamari isn't, and I don't blame him. He's leaving with what he can get, which is a reduced prison sentence or even escape a prison sentence if he gives enough. But he's walking away from that sort of loyalty. A lot of pressure, huge pressure has been brought to bear. And he will speak about his time working with El Diablo, the devil. That would be the Yeti in his Halloween suit. You know, he knows, and he knew from the beginning, but there are a lot of bent accountants in the world, let's face it, you know, and the death card. So ironically, I think it might be the junior players, Calamari and Jennifer Weisselberg, that actually bring about the demise of the Yeti's empire. Well, there you go. Now, good news, people. I'm starting readings again. I've been doing a very few, but now I'm in lockdown and I'm available. And the tarot book I've been writing is almost written. And so I'm itching to do readings. I love doing readings. So if you want a reading, please email me and we'll take it from there. Tell me where you live so I can do the calculations. So if you want a reading, get in touch. I send you the notes explaining how it works and we'll take it from there. So it's brilliant meeting you guys. It just gives me infinite joy to meet you guys. So it only brings me happiness. All right, so here I am back in my own kitchen. Take care, guys. Look after yourself. And I'll be back very soon. Bye.